Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, I will confess, this is a video topic I have been wanting to make for a very long time now. After 3 years of playing this game and covering it in great detail like I have never really asked why I play. I have just done it subconsciously. I think it's normal for human beings to get caught up into something they're passionate about and then realize a few years later that they just spent a lot of time doing something they have no idea why. This is pretty much a description of the conversation I had with myself recently, specifically about Last Epoch and my time with it. I wrote an entire script about it, but I ended up scrapping it because I wasn't really satisfied with the end product. But today, I got a comment that reignited this discussion inside my head. So, the reason why is this comment is right to some degree. For context, it was written on a recent video, the Shadow Dagger Marksman build. It was a product of me wanting to try something involving Gathering Fury, the new unique bow that came with the launch of Rising Flames just almost a week ago. Now, just so you know, this is one of many. I get tens and probably hundreds of comments like this sometimes, specifically recently with the multiplayer launch, right? So this is just normal, par for the course, right? But this one specifically, the part about it that was right was about scaling high corruption with the build, the Shadow Dagger Marksman. I don't know if this person actually watched the video or not, but I spent the majority of my 7-minute intro explaining why I didn't believe this build to be good, mainly due to there not being enough support for the archetype. Not surprisingly so, because after all, it was a melee throwing build slapped onto a marksman shell. Now, there's something I noticed in general after making content for like 3 years, is in general, there is this unwritten rule between people who make content and people who watch the content, right? Is if I go out of my way to click on a video, that video better be exactly what I'm looking for, and it better be worth my time. What do I mean by that? Well, I make a build talking about Shadow Dagger Marksman, my experience with it, and how I felt like as though it was not the best build ever, but I still had fun with it, right? People would get angry at that because it's not this 1,000 or 2,000 corruption pushing build that kills T4 Jurla in 0.5 seconds and stuff like that. And they have unhealthy, unrealistic expectations going into it. And that's why they write comments like that specifically, right? Let's be real. So that's the first part of this discussion. Now, the second part is I made the build with full intention that I was never going to push that high into corruption in the first place, nor did I ever say the build was worth your time. I actually specifically stated that you should not play this build in general. Maybe this generation of people have had their brain rotted to the core due to social media, TikTok. But I feel like if I put a red banner parading the video stating, "Do not play this, it is not worth your time," people would still complain. Now, why is that? This is the question that re-sparked my earlier thought process around why I enjoy Last Epoch, or playing ARPGs in general for the past few years. It all comes down to one word: experimentation. So, in science, at least the way it was taught to me in school, is the act of experimenting upon set variables and then recording them down for future analysis. And then, of course, coming with like a hypothesis about what you learned. That is what I enjoy doing. And ARPGs are perfect for this due to their nature of numbers and gameplay loop, and of course, experimentation. So let me explain what this means in the context for Last Epoch, at least. In the footage you're seeing right now, I am playing a static sorcerer. I am trying to simply use static as the main damage dealing source. That's the whole point of my, what I'm doing here. And I also want it to be my clear skill because I want it to do my damage and also be my clear. This requires a little bit of effort, as it isn't as simple as you would think. As to get the most damage out of static, you need to reach 200 charges to hit the hardest. About a year ago, I was prototyping a build just like this one, as I wanted to make the build function as it sounded cool in practice, like lightning from your fingertips. Doesn't that sound great? But I found that the tools to make it function were just not there back then. The biggest problem was I was not reaching 200 charges fast enough to make the build feel good enough to play, right? So I was attempting to use Battle Mage's Endeavor, a sword that allows us to cast Lightning Blast on melee attack use. So we combined this with Mana Strike to proc a large number of hits that would then crit. This is important because Static has a node inside of it that gives us 3 charges for each time we have crit if we have used Static recently. It was almost there a year ago where you could press Static and get up to 200 charges, but it wasn't consistent, and I felt like as though it wasn't worth the time. And I ended up shelving the build concept for the future. But I remembered my process. I remembered everything I worked on. I remembered it for the future. Now, of course, at the time, I deemed it as a failure. Then recently, Battle Mage's Endeavor has gone through multiple buffs. At the time of my testing a year ago, it had a 12% chance to cast Lightning Blast on melee hit, and that number was raised all the way up to a max of 48% chance after 2 buffs. This was enough for me to reopen the case file of my dead build, only to find out yes, those buffs were enough to revive my setup like Frankenstein. Yes, it was alive! The build can now reach to 200 static charges within a 3-second window consistently now, which meant that we had an infinite loop casting static over and over again without having to wait a long time for static to recharge. Now, let me ask you a simple question. If I didn't do that research, that experimentation, would I have been able to quickly put this character together and set it up and understand the concept behind it and make it all work? Probably not. At least in my opinion. I wouldn't even thought of this build if I didn't put in the work back then, but I did. Now I remember it. Now I do it now. And this is the line of thinking that finally brings me back to the topic of this video. Why do I play Last Epoch? I play it because it rubs my itch for experimentation. And I realized recently that there is some sort of phantom lording over ARPGs and gaming as a whole. Heck, you could take this and put it in the broader perspective about life in general. This led to me one of the things I have learned while playing ARPGs. People are afraid to experiment. They are afraid to fail, which is why this comment stuck out to me so much. Because to be completely honest with you, this is not the first comment of its kind, and it's not going to be the last either. People are afraid to try things, and it leads to stuff like this and mentalities like this. I'll be honest, I have never said that people should play the builds in the videos I make. I've never really said that in most cases. Except for the top 5 video series where I cherry pick builds specifically to showcase off and to tell you what I believe to be a good option in the current patch, or I go out of my way to let you know that this is something I'm suggesting. A lot of my work and a lot of my content is based around experimentation, and that means that not every build is a complete success. That doesn't stop people from using my work to help in their own endeavors. Battle Mage's Endeavor. You see what I did there? I think if people were less afraid of failure, then they could achieve more in the world. The person who made this comment is probably the kind of person that blankly follows or copies a guide on YouTube for the new Path of Exile League, but then gets angry when he doesn't understand any of the context of why the author of the video was doing what they were doing and why they were doing it, mainly because they watched 5 seconds and then clicked off. Let's be real, this happens all the time. It's led to a few friends of mine to actually hide their POBs just to deal with the rampant amount of comments complaining about things that are explained in the video. We get it. People don't want to watch the whole video, but I'm going to be honest, my content, it's not for those people. There are plenty of people willing to cater towards this audience, and they make a killing off of it, making a living off of other people's unwillingness to try a little and make their own stuff or their own build. My content is for people like me who experiment and have fun. Specifically, that last part, people who have fun. That's really the point of playing games, no? Is to have fun. I'm having fun doing what I'm doing. Sometimes I will have fun playing an OP busted build, like playing Wraiths a year before anyone else even thought about it, except you, Darkwook, love you. And sometimes I want to experiment with something like Shadow Dagger Marksman, not because it might or might not be good, but because I can. Now, that's enough for this video. Like I said, I play last Epoch because I love experimenting and it does my itch for that. But I realize a lot of people don't like experimenting. Now, remember to have fun, guys. This is a game, after all. Bye.